In this video, we're going to walk through an example of using generics in your own classes. So it's pretty straightforward how you use generics with the Java provided collection classes. You simply put the underlying data type you want to be used in that class in the angle brackets, like we did with the array list. But let's say you want to design your own collection class, which is something that we will do a lot in this course. You are going to write all sorts of different classes that represent different data structures, and you want to be able to have people who use your classes use them with generics, just like we can use the Java provided classes with generics. So to do that, you can use generics in writing your own classes. So let's take a look first at an example of not using generics to write a collection class. And the example we're going to use is a box. So a box is going to be a data structure that holds a single item at a time and keeps track of how many items have been put into the box. So you can put in a new item, which basically replaces the contents of the box, and we keep track of how many times that's happened. So the instance data variable that will describe our box is going to be just an object. It's going to be a thing. Be one thing in the box at a time. So we will initialize, we'll create a constructor, and initially we'll say you'll put something in the box. It'll be the first thing. And we're also going to keep track of, again, how many things have been in the box. Call it the thing count. So when we create a new box object, what we do is we say, okay, the thing is, first thing in there is going to be the first thing you give me. And now the thing count is going to be 1 because there's been one thing placed inside the box. Then we'll have a method called replace the contents of the box. Replace contents, where you send me a new thing. And now the thing is the new thing. And the thing count is incremented. And then we'll have a way of retrieving the thing count. Okay, so pretty simple class. Again, it's a very simple data structure. It just allows you to hold one thing at a time and keeps track of how many times you've replaced that thing. So let's now have a driver program to use this class that we wrote. Okay, so what I can do is I can create a box. I'll call it a gift box. And I'll start out by putting in a string, and then I will replace the contents with an integer, and I can replace those contents with a student, etc. Okay? So this is an example of a simple collection class. And we haven't used generics, which means we can put any different types of thing inside this collection, this box. This is similar to our array list before we used generics, right? With our array list, without that student in angle brackets, we could put anything inside the list. Same thing here. Now, let's say I want, though, to be able to restrict the contents of the box to only be able to hold one type of thing. Well, to do that, I'd have to add generics to my box class. So the way I do that is I define the data type in the class header by using a single letter inside angle brackets. Typically the letter we use is T for type. So what this means is I'm saying when you create objects of this type, you're also going to use generics to specify what kind of objects are held by that type. And now, instead of having an object be the underlying thing that's held, it's going to be of type T. And when you send in as a constructor, it's going to be of type T. And when you send in a parameter to replace the contents, it's going to be of type T. So instead of just using generic objects, I've instead used T. Okay. Now, this doesn't change my driver program. I can still ignore the generics and add all different kinds of objects to my box. Right, just like I did with array list. With an array list, I can ignore the generics and I can add different kinds of objects to the list. Same thing with the class I wrote on my own. But what I can do as well, if I don't want to ignore the generics, if I want to use the generics, which again, remember, most of the time when we're using collection classes, we want that collection to hold one kind of object. So if that's the case, what I can say is, oh, I'm going to create a box to hold strings, a word box, And now I would not be able to add to that word box or replace the contents with an integer. That will not be allowed. I'll get a compiler error. And it's a compile time check, which is a good thing because it's easy for us to fix, or easier for us to fix. But I can go ahead and replace those contents with other strings. And similarly, I could have an integer numbers box. Helps if I spell integer correctly. Etc. Okay, but I would not be able to replace the context of my numbers box with a string. That would be not allowed. So this way, how it works is that this T is kind of like a placeholder. And if you don't specify generics when you create an object of your collection type, in this case a box, if I don't use generics, it's as if this T is just object. It's as if at runtime, Java went through and did a search and replace of all the T's and just changed them to object. So basically you can put any kind of object in the box. But if you do use generics to specify a type, like string or integer or student, for example, then it's as if Java did a search and replace here and got rid of this and just made this say string, string, string. And the next time, and got rid of that. It's almost like you have that class. But then in this next example, it's like you have this class. It's like it did a search and replace, and these are all integers. And it's not actually doing a search and replace, right? It's instead just using this T as a placeholder so that when a user of your class creates an object using any data type, at runtime, that data type is filtered all the way throughout the class. So you can use T anywhere you need as a stand-in or kind of a fill-in, a placeholder for whatever type the user will create. Okay? So it's actually also pretty straightforward to use generics in your own collection class. This is probably something that's new to most of you. Even if you've used generics before in the Java provided classes like the array list, most of you probably have not used generics in your own classes that you've written. But this is something we will do a lot in this course. So I encourage you to become very familiar with this example and work with it a little bit, play around with it, see how it works. And how you can use it in writing your own collection classes, because again, this is something we will do a lot in the class. So take a look at this and post questions to the discussion board.